Maybe we don't have to say any more. just show great videos. Actually, that video is the trailer for one of our e-learning courses called Let's Talk Digital, but I think it's very powerful and kind of sets the stage for the context of disruption. So I'm Brenda Sugru. It's really nice to be here today. As Mike said, I'm the internal Global Chief Learning Officer for EY. I'll say a little bit more about EY and disruption in a second, but I'd like to turn it over to Mary to introduce herself.
So good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see you all here. First of all, I'd like to apologize that Mary Kay Bona could not be here today. Unfortunately, she had a family emergency and needed to go home to see her folks. My name is Mary Wolf, and I'm a senior manager in People Advisory Services for EY. I am client-facing. My background is in learning. I've been in learning for 25 years, both in industry and consulting. So I started my career for the Walt Disney Company in operations and working as part of the Disney University. I then went to consulting with IBM, flipped back over to industry, and for 8 years I worked for Yum Brands, implementing learning technologies for them. And then about 2.5 years ago, went back over to consulting and now work for EY. As part of my role in EY, I focus on learning services, which is learning strategy, learning technologies, and leadership development. And Brenda is actually one of my clients.
Today we're going to share with you some research that myself, internally at EY, and our People Advisory Services group conducted together externally, about 400 respondents to a broad survey. So we're going to share the research questions, the results, and some implications and interpretations. In addition, we have a bonus for you. We think we're going to get through this pretty quickly as the research findings, but then we're going to switch gears. I'm going to take the opportunity to tell you the learning transformation story at EY. I've been at EY for 5 years now, and we have completely transformed the function from soup to nuts. And that would, I think, be a nice case study, and I can also make some connections to the findings we found in the broader group and world of learning with what we're doing at EY. And as Mary said, our own People Advisory Services have been helping us with this journey. So back to disruption. EY, of course, its business has been disrupted by everything that's going on in the world, particularly technological change, the disruption that's happening in all industries, because as professional services firm, we serve all industries, and we have to keep up with all the changes that are happening in our clients' industries so that we can stay ahead of them. For us as a firm as well, because we do audits, a lot of regulatory and political uncertainty, and of course the demographic changes in the workforce that everybody's experiencing, and our workforce has changed tremendously. Believe it or not, 76% of our workforce is millennial, under the age of 30. And we even switched our dress code last year to jeans. People can wear jeans all the time. So you walk into an EY office now, you might be in Google, you might be at Facebook. It's very modern, it's very fast, and it's a great place to work. So because EY is advising clients and helping them respond to disruption and grow their businesses, we have made it our business to become an expert in disruption. Back in 2015, we founded a think tank called EYQ, which did a ton of research and continues to produce a disruption index every quarter, looking at like 300,000 events that are happening across the industries and creating indexes and benchmarks and strategies that companies can use to stay ahead of disruption. And this is all available on our website. If you went there now, you can see all of these reports. And without even hiring EY, you can get the benefit of that intelligence. We also use it internally for ourselves in our own transformation, because not only have we transformed talent and learning, but we're transforming our entire business with diversification of our services, innovation. We now have a chief innovation officer, heads of AI, heads of robotics. It's a completely different business than it used to be. But in the spirit of EY being very positive and a very, I guess, positive environment to work in, we always focus on the positive. So our reports, you can see the first one there, the upside of disruption. So our approach to disruption is that it's a good thing, and there is an upside, and we can take advantage of it. When we thought about doing some research on learning and how learning organizations are responding to disruption across all industries, we thought about these questions here, these three research questions. How are we all responding? How aligned are our business leaders with us as heads of learning, our learning executives? Because 13 years ago, coincidentally, myself and Mary Kay Vona were part of a group that did a similar study, although it was done qualitatively with interviews of CXOs, CEOs, CIOs, CFOs, and CLOs in 25 companies, the same companies, and we asked them the same questions, and we found that mostly they were aligned in their views on how learning was valued in the organization and how it was helping to drive the business. But there was one twist, one area where they were not aligned, and that was mainly around measurement and what would be good indicators of the value that learning brings to the organization. At that time, 13 years ago, the CXOs, as we'll call them, were happy to say, oh, it's the perceptions. If my business leaders are happy and the business is doing well, that's all I need to know about learning. You don't need to be gathering business impact data and all of that. Whereas the CLOs, they were saying, well, we want to be more rigorous. We want to measure learning and application and business impact. So we were interested to see if that was still the case. We also wanted to see how aligned the business leaders and the learning leaders are at this point in time. And then we wanted to come up with some ideas on how we might take action to increase learning's value in coping with and taking advantage of the upside of disruption. So we asked our sample of business and learning leaders questions in these categories here: the strategic role of learning itself, how certain aspects of what we know are part of a learning culture, how prevalent are they in their organization right now. We asked them questions about analytics and measurement, workforce transformation, their current and planned investments in learning, and then some basic questions on how learning is operating with delivery, content, infrastructure, et cetera. So we're going to share with you all of those results right now.
So some demographics for you. So as Brenda said, that we surveyed 400 leaders across the globe. These were in different geographies and different industries. When we define CXO in this case, it's business leaders outside of the learning function. For this entire pool, as Brenda said, we talked about what is your strategic priority, what is the investment you're making in learning, what is measurement, and what is the learning culture that you have. And then in addition to that, for our CLOs, we asked them questions about the operation of their function. When it came to this is a hard word to say, strategic role of learning. You're going to hear me trip over this word the entire presentation. What is learning's effectiveness in enabling this for an organization? And we looked at 4 things: customer centricity, product and service innovation, operational excellence, and industry and market disruption. And what you can see here is that CXOs rated learning higher in all of these areas than CLOs. The biggest distinction is in the bottom one, industry and market disruption. The CXOs have more confidence in learning leaders and in learning itself, that it can really have an impact on the business and this topic, than CLOs have that confidence in themselves. We also looked at learning culture. And so we had a partner as we did this work, which was the Institute of Corporate Productivity, I4CP, and they've done a tremendous amount of research in the field of learning culture. And they've defined 7 characteristics of a learning culture. And so we leveraged those characteristics to ask leaders again how they would rate their organizations. The good news on this slide is that CLOs and CXOs rated them the same way, in the same order. The difference again is the CXOs were more positive than the CLOs on how their organization is actually achieving these. The first 2 were truly aligned. Learning drives brand and learning is promoted as an organizational value. Those were both very strong. The one that was not as strong is that effectiveness is measured.
Speaking of measurement, my favorite topic. So we asked them a basic question: should we be measuring the impact of learning on the business. And again, very similar to 13 years ago, the CLOs, 90% of them said, yes, we should. CXOs, business leaders, 50%, yes, we should. So 50% of them, they don't care. Well, that's what our data is saying. Now, we asked them then, are you measuring? And 1/3 of companies said they were actually measuring the impact of learning on business outcomes. We also asked them to rank the importance of measuring, the 4 levels, if you like, reaction or satisfaction, learning, application, and impact. And you can look at the orderings there that we got from the business leaders and the learning leaders. With the learning leaders, again, putting impact right up there, number 1. CXOs, on the other hand, put impact number 2, and they were more concerned that we actually know that we are building the skills, that people are learning. And I guess they're making the inference, if people are learning the skills we're training them on, then the business outcomes will follow.
So then we talked about the impact of technology. How many of you are seeing a big impact in your business today because of technology? Probably the majority of you are seeing this. When we asked the CXOs and CLOs, 42% of CLOs and 60% or 30% of CXOs see advanced technologies impacting their business within the next 12 months, if not today. How many of you agree that it's impacting you today? So this is a big impact to your business and how you operate as a business. The 3 areas that we found were really anticipated changes to the workforce are around reskilling, and we've heard a lot of conversations about reskilling in this conference and really leading up to it, hiring for new profiles, and then retraining our existing workforce. I was talking to Brenda earlier. I'm working with a client right now. It's a large pharmaceutical company, global, and their leader over their global finance shared services group sees this as a big concern for his business. Not for a concern for how the business needs to operate, but he's worried about his people. So he asked EY to come in and help him solve this issue. So one of the things I'm working with him on is developing a digital academy. What he wanted to have happen is that his team is not only trained and skilled to do the work that they see coming within his business, but he knows as automation takes over, he's going to lose part of his workforce. There's going to be either attrition or he's going to need to do layoffs. And he wants to make sure that his people are prepared for that. So he asked us to come in and train his workforce on 3 topics. One is automation. One is data visualization. So think about finance, reports, Power BI, Tableau, those type of tools. But then the third one was digital generalist. And this is just a broad stroke at digital to give them just the baseline understanding of RPA, data visualization, blockchain, artificial intelligence, and a series of other topics. We put people in the different groups based on their work job that they're doing today or their interest level. And out of this program, they do a couple things. They take several learning programs, and this is all curated content with some EY-developed content mixed in. They do activities throughout, so as they learn things, they need to now go back into the business and teach others what they learned. And at the end of this program, they do a capstone. So we asked business leaders to give us 3 different RPA examples, 3 data visualization, and 3 digital generalist projects that these individuals can work on, with the goal of them creating and doing something that they can now take back into the business and deliver as a product. What his end goal out of this was to treat his people right. So he knows that he's going to lose workforce, and he's hoping that they now have transferable skills somewhere else within their large global business, but if not, he's preparing them to go out into the market and find jobs. So it's a nice gift that he's giving to his team. At the same time, he's adjusting the businesses and the processes within his business itself. What's interesting is a lot of focus has been put on technology and the impact technology changes have had on learning. But the largest skill deficiency found as part of this research was actually in leadership. How many of you are in the process of changing your leadership programs? Most of you. As part of changing your leadership programs, are you also changing the competencies or capabilities framework that sits underneath it? So a few of you are. One of the pieces of work that EY did about 18 months ago now is called the Global Leader Forecast. And it was research done between the Conference Board, DDI, and EY. And this is available on ey.com, so you can go out and pull this down if you're interested in it, or you can send me a note and I'll send it to you. But it's research about what's happening to leaders as your organizations are going through transformation, whether it's digital, business, financial, and M&A, whatever that change is, what's really impacting our leaders. And one of the things that we're finding is their core competencies and capabilities are changing, and they're changing in 3 ways. There are some that are staying the same. There's some that are table stakes. Our leaders need to know business acumen. They need to have customer service. They need to be authentic leaders. There are some that are net new. So these are emerging competencies or skills. Things like balancing human with technology. So you think back to my example of that pharmaceutical company. He now has leaders in his teams that have half their team may be robots or bots, and half are people. So how are they now balancing human and technology? Another one would be resilience. There's so much change happening that how are we building resilient leaders to manage it? The third bucket is really evolving some existing competencies and putting a bit of a twist on it to really be able to help these leaders adapt to what's happening. So a great example of that is managing change. Managing change has been a core competency in leaders for a very long time. But what if you looked at it in a different way? Managing change is about being reactive. It's about what's already happened to me and I need to fix something. But what if I instead embrace disruption? What if I look forward, I'm proactive, and I see what's coming and I figure out how to leverage it to my advantage? So I don't wait till it hits me and then I need to deal with it. I actually bring it into me instead. Another example of this is problem solving. Instead of solving problems, why don't we have 360 thinking? Why don't we look at things more holistically? You know, Shane talked about this a little bit yesterday. Flip the problem on its side and look at it from a different perspective. So what we're seeing is really this change or this evolution in some of the core competencies that we know our leaders need to have in order to be successful as digital transformation or all these other transformations are hitting our organizations. And in all this, the other thing that we need to make sure we've done is identify the critical job roles that we need to be successful in business over the next 3 years. So if you think about your organizations, how many of you have done this? How many of you have identified, looking 3 years out, the critical job roles that you need in your business? The survey results show that 60% of CXOs believe this is done for their business, whereas 40% of CLOs believe this is done. So this is a critical feature. If you think back to one of the previous slides that talked about reskilling, hiring for new profile, retraining, all of those things tie into this, that you need to identify what those critical job roles are first so that you know what you need to reskill to, you know what you need to retrain to, and you know who you need to hire in order to support your business over the next 3 years. It also takes a great deal of investment.
Exactly. And a lot of what Mary just talked about in how we're changing our leadership model, our leadership training, and our technical training, I'm going to share a little bit about how we're internally doing that at EY as well, particularly with a badges program that we launched over a year ago now. Mm-hmm. So what's happening for our external clients is happening as well for us. So where are we with investment? When we asked this group of business and learning leaders, what would you do if your budgets were doubled? What would you spend that money on? The overwhelming agreement was we would spend it on building those new future-focused skills, technical and non-technical. So complete agreement there. Now we have to figure out what they are, what the roles are in the first place. Then the CXO's second priority would be measurement. Whereas the CXOs, now here's a little bit of a disconnect in their own minds, or dissonance here. Their next priority would be measurement. I know, it's weird. But maybe they're not thinking question by question. Or we're the ones left here thinking, and then the CLOs would prioritize infrastructure, because a lot of what's holding back is the lack of infrastructure, old systems, too many systems, and a lack of integration of learning and other talent systems to actually integrate our hiring and our onboarding and our learning and our performance management, et cetera. And then finally, both of them, again, the next level down, or the next priority, would be, again, integrating HR and talent more would be where the investment would go. And here we go. I call this state of the industry on a slide. Because if we look at delivery, and actually this very much reflects and validates all the other studies that you would have seen, including the state of the industry, on how people are currently delivering learning, where they're getting their content, and how they're feeling about the capability of their own learning professionals and learning workforce to serve them, et cetera. So everything moving online, away from classrooms, 50-50, more mobile, 11% this one is saying, so that's about right, I think, compared to others. For the future, though, even the classroom is moving online, and we're doing this at EY too. There's the movement to the self-directed content and on-demand content, but even what's in classrooms now and what you need to do in classrooms, like practice and feedback and discussion, hands-on, et cetera, is moving to virtual classrooms. So I think the future of virtual classroom is going to be bigger than it even is right now, and of course the self-service. On the content, again, everybody's moving to have more curated content from external sources. Things are changing so fast we can't even build the content. And why would we if a lot of it is the same? At EY, we've licensed many external libraries to provide a lot of the basic technical content in the areas like analytics, blockchain, robotics, et cetera. And then, of course, the employee-generated content, still at 11% there. And I'll talk a little bit at EY, where we're taking the plunge into more social learning in the future. We haven't actually done that much on social learning yet, but there are a lot of companies who now are using platforms to just have the employees share the latest content among themselves. The future, again, we ask people about the future. It's going to be more external and more micro-learning, which is the trend. In terms of capability, less than 50% said that their learning infrastructure is effectively integrated with our talent system. So there we have a big capability gap in learning's ability to understand even the workforce and then provide the right learning to the right people. And then over 60% of us have huge capability gaps in our own teams, having the right skills to be able to curate content, be more technology savvy in delivering content, move to virtual classroom and manage that type of facilitator work, facilitator groups, et cetera. So the future, going to the future, it's going to be more technology integration and more specialists in these learning domains so that we can have the people on our teams who can help us with deliver the kind of learning that we're going to be delivering in the future.
And what's interesting on this too is I was working with a client over the last year to redo their learning strategy. And one of the things we realized as we've walked through the process is it's not the universities of 5-10 years ago, even of 2 or 3 years ago. We really needed to look at all the roles within her team differently. Content management is different now. Content management is no longer about instructional design, creating your own content library, managing that library. It's about how do you curate and find the best content out there. If you think about, and for those of you who have done this, it brings another whole realm of things you have to think about. How do I subscribe? Who gets that subscription? What technology do they access it through? What does that user experience start to look like? So it changes the dynamics of the learning team and the development of the learning team as it's changing the dynamic of the business. You know, we're shifting more towards self-learning than organizational learning. You know, never has learning been through such a big transformation. It's been quite some time since we really have had to really shake up our own organizations and look and think about them differently. But I think as we close out this portion of the presentation, there's 3 key messages. One is, as we talked about, the technology has a big disruption. It has a disruption in the tools and technology we use as learning professionals. It has a disruption on the skill set that we need to train to, the people we need to hire into our businesses. That's not going to change. That's going to continue on its path. We know that investment needs to be made in infrastructure to help support this. If you think about doing more curated content, it may be a different platform, or it may be an offshoot of the platform you have today. So again, those technologies and being able to integrate across those to HR is really important. If we think about needing to look at talent profiles and how that now taps into learning, what we've always known for years that those two should be closer together, they are actually coming closer together because of this need. But I think the third key message out of this is, I think throughout this presentation and throughout this research, what we noticed was that CXOs rated learning higher in every area over CLOs. Now, there's 2 possible reasons for that. One is that CLOs really know the complexity and the challenges of their business, and they're being realistic in how they answer the questions. The other thing is you're just hard on yourselves, right? So there's a little bit of maybe self-bias in this, and that CLOs were a little harder on themselves than they needed to be. And so there was this big distinction between how CXOs perceived learning and how the learning leaders perceived learning. But I think what the opportunity is out of that is it's great to see that CXOs are putting so much value in learning, and they're seeing the value that learning can bring to the growth of their organization. And what's really interesting about that is the growth you bring the organization is best practice in learning, always has been. It's about identifying skills that are needed. It's about building capability within the company, and it's about doing that as effectively and efficiently as you can. That hasn't changed, but now you have more of a platform on which to do it. And speaking of that, I'm going to turn it over to Brenda, and she's going to take you through the EY story.
Thank you, Mary.
Thanks.
And Mary will come back out at the end so we can take questions on both topics. So I'll just keep going here, and we're actually doing well on time. So I started at EY 5 years ago, and many of my team are here, the team I inherited and a couple who came with me from other places. And we've been working away for 5 years on this. And we're very excited to have an opportunity to share some of that. Some of the things we've done are mirroring the trends. Some of the things we've done, you might say, oh, that's interesting. I wonder why they did it that way. So I'll try to tell you. Now, this presentation normally takes an hour, so I'm going to speed through it. But you guys are fast learners. I can see that. If you're taking pictures, don't worry. We'll make the slides available. But you can, because some of the slides are busy. And I'm just going to want to give you the full story, though. I didn't want to leave any bits out, because it all hangs together as a story. So I'm going to talk about the context, the strategy, how we executed, the impact we've seen, and we've invested a lot in measurement, you know, going a little bit against the grain there, and then a little bit about what's next for us. We've talked about disruption. This is the context for us, the business leading to talent, and then even in learning, disrupting ourselves. At EY, we are lucky to be part of a bigger talent transformation. Where in order to attract, develop, and engage the right people to future-proof our business, we have a very integrated strategy for workforce planning, recruitment, so we get the right pipeline of people coming in as new hires, both out of college and experienced. Then we're there in the third category, building the skills, because we can't even hire enough people with the right AI and analytics capabilities. So we've got to build the skills internally, both the traditional skills and the new skills. And then finally, we are, believe it or not, changing our career models within EY, our career frameworks, our career paths from the pyramid, you know, you move up or out in ranks, to now a much more flexible career path where people who come in with technology have as much opportunity to build their careers at EY as they would have at Facebook or Google. And this is all underpinned by an investment in digital infrastructure and digital talent, the technology, automation. We are crazy for automation. We do it for our clients, and we do it for ourselves as well. AI, I'll show you a couple of examples where we are using AI in learning right now, and analytics. Now, this is our from to slide. 5 years ago, you could say EY was over there, custom content. Now we're at a mix of content. We had an outdated LMS, multiple platforms, multiple user experiences. Now we have one platform and one user experience, which is top-of-the-line experience, very well designed. We have incomplete and inconsistent reporting. Now we have comprehensive and consistent reporting. Multiple siloed learning teams. Now we have one integrated learning team. So this is all of what's happened in the 5 years, and all in the service of being more aligned to the business, more effective, and more efficient. The strategy. So this is how we define alignment, effectiveness, and efficiency at EY. We define it for the business, for the learner, and the function. So let's take efficiency. For the business, we want to minimize our costs. For the learner, we want to minimize the time to learn and to become an expert in whatever their chosen skill area is. And for the function, we want to optimize our resources. We actually we never talk at EY about cutting or reducing our workforce in learning or in talent. It's all about optimizing those resources and freeing them up from tasks that are repetitive, moving those into shared services, and then having the people who work in learning working on those higher value strategic and specialized activities. In reality, then, the strategy has two sides to it. One is keeping our people relevant for the changing world and for everything that they're going to have to face in their current roles and in their careers. The right skills and the right learning. It's quite simple, actually, when you put it on a slide like that. So the right skills, both the technical and the leadership, and the existing and the emerging. The right learning, we want to take people all the way from novice to deep skills in whatever the domain is. And then our learning is a combination of on-demand and hands-on. We've totally flipped the classroom, so if you're doing classroom, it's got to be simulation, challenges, activities, discussions. A good example, actually, is for our emerging domains. You saw that trailer for the Let's Talk Digital is the name of that program. But we have a series now, Let's Talk Digital, Let's Talk Innovation, Let's Talk AI. And this is to make all of our people conversant in those technologies, in those fields, in those domains, so that they can talk to clients and they can talk to each other. The next level, we have this EY badges, where we're actually giving very rigorous credentials ourselves to our people who get badges in domains like blockchain, robotics, AI. And that's been a huge effort over the past couple of years. This is completely voluntary, and people say, well, if you build it, will they come? We are not mandating the badges, and we thought we might have 1,000 people get badges in the first year because it's very rigorous. They have to take maybe for even a bronze badge, 20 hours of curated learning. They have to make a contribution into some blogs or online systems about what they're learning, about what they're doing on, and they also have to demonstrate and attest that they have certain experiences on the job. So we're now, I think, almost at 6,000 people who have voluntarily put the time in to get these badges. We hear all kinds of stories. Over in London, they're creating study halls after work to study together to get these badges. Now we've moved on, and we're creating boot camps in a box where we can take a boot camp out to a region or a business that's growing their business in, for example, RPA. And we have the vendor technology training that's coming from vendors. We have EY cases, and we're getting them engagement ready. And they have to be ready to go. There has to be an engagement for them after they complete the boot camp. The second side of our strategy coin is the exceptional learning experience. And we feel that this is embodied in the technology. Where people go, what is it that they see? How do they access learning? It's not just the content, it's the whole environment. And somebody talked about that yesterday, about creating an environment for learning, not just creating the learning itself. And we put our money on, you might say, why success factors? We picked success factors as our integrated talent technology. And those of us in learning, we studied that success factors system, and we figured out all the things it could do. And some of you might be saying, oh, it can't do this. I hear people all the time, success factors can't do that. I say, yes, it can, because we're doing it. So we have pushed success factors to the limit, and we have gone from even many portals around the place, one portal, one place where you can get access to everything, including all of those external libraries. We curate the content and we pop it in the catalog so we can track it, but even beyond that, anybody can just go on out to Skillsoft or Udemy and learn whatever they want. It's not tracked at the individual level, but it's there for people. We have our learning history, our compliance tracking, all in one place. We love success factors. I gave a presentation somewhere and I said, they never saw anybody so passionate about their LMS. and it's because, it's working for us, and we've built a lot of things around it. So let's get into execution. Because we put technology first. We chose success factors, then we chose ServiceNow as the interface between our learning admin teams and our learning teams and the shared services which we are continuing to grow and grow. Then we created our end-to-end processes to align with the technology and created all of the forms, for example, in ServiceNow to all match up and align. And of course, the shared services, we always had very big deployment administration services that all of our regions around the world were using. Those now have increased and expanded, and all the communication is done through ServiceNow in a consistent way, following similar processes. Before, there were different processes. And we've set up, for the first time, a content administration shared service. So all content is managed and published, and everything is done through one central team. That was a big change at EY, but we made that happen. And that makes everything more consistent, makes life a lot easier. And then finally, now that we have a lot of things in shared services, the processes are documented, they're humming along, we're moving into automation. Automating a lot of those processes that perhaps SuccessFactors doesn't do, but we just create bots and we augment it. And already starting to save time and money on the shared services. With our teams, we've restructured our central team into specialized pillars, we call them, or departments, rather than having portfolios doing everything. Each of our service lines would have had a team doing their needs analysis, their business partnering, designing and developing solutions or finding solutions, managing deployment, and all of that. Well, now we have the portfolios still, but the people in the learning teams are specialized into these. And the business partnering group manages all of the relationships with the business and also with our regions who deploy our global curriculum and also do some local content development. And then we have our shared services. So we're one happy family, one big team, and we've worked very hard at that over the past few years. Of course, change management has been a big effort and would be required in any big transformation like this, but we're lucky that at EY there is a long history and legacy and competency, if you like, in change management, so we leverage that and we do all of the things you should do. We give people an opportunity to participate in the initial definition of what we're doing. We have all kinds of communications and networks for implementation, weekly calls, virtual cafes. Everybody is interconnected. Dedicated support teams as we roll things out. And then one of the interesting things on the AI we've partnered with Watson. We have an alliance with IBM, and we use Goldie as a chatbot. So all of the training materials we create for the new processes and systems, et cetera, for our learning people, they can now just type in the question into Goldie, and Goldie will find the right document or the right reference guide for them. They don't have to even go to the training site anymore. Now, two other things I think that maybe are something different that EY has done in parallel to all of that user experience and right content, right skills, et cetera. We have focused very heavily on content quality. So how do you define content quality? We looked at a lot of the research on learning science, instructional science, what works in learning. We created a checklist that we use now as a common language in how to talk about learning and the elements of learning. We use it as a tool for reviewing our content, so we can create like heat maps here showing how we're doing in general, say a group of courses, the objectives, the assessment, etc. And we also use this as a recipe for design. If your eyesight was good, you'd see that our checklist is organized from objectives, assessment, practice, because that's the way you actually design learning. You might run it forwards, but you design backwards. So we said, why not make the checklist reflect that too? So we invest a lot in content quality. And I'm going to give you just one example of how our designs are looking now. All of our learning designs look like this at a high level, where it's modular, and we color code the self-directed bits, even self-directed practice, and then the facilitated pieces are yellow. And we mix and match these into learning paths or journeys, you might call them. And this is just an example of one. Once it's all developed, it looks something like this. And this is one where it was just all on-demand content, including the practice. But we try to make sure that every program or every journey has the overviews, the presentational content, and then some nod to practice and feedback. Even if you say, well, they're going to do the practice on the job, just acknowledge that there's going to need to be practice for people to build this skill. And then back to SuccessFactors. Because we have this system now, we're able to sequence these modules or these pieces in a very orderly way and people can go into a program and see the bits. They can take the bits by themselves as items or learning objects, but you can follow a path and you can track yourself against that path. One other thing on the execution, we haven't abandoned classroom. We're still, I think, we're getting close to 60% classroom now, which is really good for us, coming from like 80-something% 5 years ago. But and there's a long tradition at EY, I did not start this, of being very deliberate in how we design our live learning events. Because usually we combine learning with networking with some kind of celebration. For example, a milestone when all our managers are promoted, we'll have this big event. We design everything, like facilitator guides, the signage, even down to the coffee cup holders have messaging on them, and it's all integrated and aligned, and it happens that way all over the world consistently. The picture there is very interesting too, because we've had to disrupt our facilitators. Our facilitators come from the business for the most part. We don't have a cadre of facilitators, and we invest a lot in this. 1 million hours our senior managers and partners spend every year either contributing to the design of content or the facilitation. And they see this as part of their job, giving back. And they will sit, the picture there's some very senior people at EY. They're running global accounts, running sectors, and they're sitting in there being trained to deliver a new program that is all challenge-based. So they are now truly facilitating, not lecturing anymore. Impact. We've had this measurement strategy for 5 years since I started at EY, which involves, updating our reporting so we can, at a glance, have dashboards to look at how we're doing on different metrics, program evaluation going all the way to business impact, analytics, even comparing learning data with other talent and business data in a kind of a big data way, and then doing special studies. In fact, the study we just shared with you is one example of how we're trying to do some special studies as well. So this slide shows you on reporting, because we started keeping really good track of our metrics and defining them, we're now able to, every year, update this table so we know how much we're spending, we know how many hours we're delivering, we know what our average course satisfaction is, et cetera, et cetera. Looking across our programs and all the various program evaluations we've done, we're able to meta-analyze those and look at things like perceptions of value, relevance, confidence, and then application and business impact. Look at those across studies and say, where is the favorable range for EY programs, and what's our median, and then compare that with a set of over 200 studies that our partner here has done in other large global companies. And we were able to say, well, we're outperforming, or we're higher than most of the benchmarks on most of those metrics for learning programs. And the thing that we're probably most proud of, and that I say all the time, is we are able to double the impact on the business with the right training. We've seen it over and over again. For example, down there, transaction strategy and operations. And Sean Phillips is here, the person who owns and runs that program, designed that program. The value of the opportunities identified by participants versus non-participants, and we're big enough that we always have naturally occurring control groups and can match them up and do this in the right statistical way. 629,000 versus 188,000. Now that's a big impact per person, even if you only had 100 of our senior leaders going through this. So you show these numbers and it kind of changes the conversation. Oh yes, one thing we do too, when we do go back out to people and ask them if they're applying the learning on the job, we ask them to give us an example, give us a story about how you're using it and what impact you're seeing. Now, this is not the controlled study, but we have built up hundreds of these little business impact cases and stories that we can point to as well, and they're really rich data source, and we can talk about individuals actually and the impact it's having. I'm going to show you a few examples of the dashboards we've created. For this one is learning satisfaction. We have just a very few things we measure: value, relevance, confidence, and intent to apply are 4 basic questions. And then we can slice and dice the data and see how different, the same course might be doing in different regions of the world, different service lines, et cetera. We also have, another example of AI. We have 2 open-ended questions in all of our learner feedback questions, and we're now able to use AI and machine learning to constantly look through those and pull out what are the most common keywords and themes that people are saying and what they value the most and what they would like more of, or what could be done too. So we don't have to crawl through thousands and thousands of text anymore. That's a really great labor-saving device. And that came from actually somebody who works in our analytics department. They came up with that idea and they implemented it. Now we're using it. For our badges, we have a dashboard that looks slightly differently, but it's, again, just tracking who is applying for badges, who is completing badges, where is it? And then you'll have service lines saying, oh, advisory, they've got 1,000 of their people have badges, and we only have 100. So it creates almost a little gamification there among the business to say, we want more of our people to get these credentials in the emerging domains. Now I'm just going to show you an example of how we take from the almost pre-design all the way to the measurement for our new manager training program, which maybe 10,000 people go through every year. We start everything with a business value chain. So when we have our learning objectives, we ask ourselves, if people learned those things or achieve those learning objectives, what would they be able to do on the job? And then where would we see the business impact? In this case, we would want to see an impact on business development, maybe again the dollar value of the opportunities identified by these managers. And then one big thing we want to do at the moment is we want to bring all of EY to the client. We don't want to go to EY as audit or advisory and tax. We want to go together. And so we want to track how many of our service lines are being brought into an opportunity. So we thought that would be a good metric here because we mix the people up in the teams and they do real challenges, and we're hoping that that will open their eyes and have them even contact people that they've gotten to know during the program when they're making proposals to clients. So that's the business value chain. The new manager program, again, this was a complete redesign from very traditional topics, lecture, discussion, to a series of challenges that were set in a digital context. So we want them to be learning more about digital as well as learning the managerial skills. This is just an example of one of the challenges and how it operates. Again, all across all of the world, you have videos that set the task, and then the facilitators allow people to work in teams, assess their work. We've kind of gamified this a little bit too, in that the deliverables they produce and their team processes are being scored and entered into a system by the facilitators, and then we can see how many teams across, maybe there might be 200 teams going on in one event, how many teams are getting gold and silver and bronze in the Challenge 1, Challenge 2, Challenge 3. If you look closely, you'll see that by the third challenge, there are more of them in the gold category than in the bronze. So they're getting better at teaming as well as they go through the days of the challenges. So this just shows, in a way, our program evaluation on one slide. So we can look at the satisfaction, those 4 variables. We can look at the learning before and after on those learning objectives and look at the gain. We measured this after. We asked people to tell us to rate their skill level before and after. Because we feel only after they've been through the program do they really have an understanding of what it was all about and could do that. So we see gains. Then when we go out to them some months later and ask them by survey and or interview, are they using it? So we see 66 to 93% saying, yes, I'm applying it, depending on which of those behaviors it is. We can look at intention to apply versus actual application. And then we can, by asking them if they have examples or stories, we say 90% of them who have applied it are able to talk about some impact that they saw in a client or in even the way they're working with their team. And then here is the punchline for that program, and this is just one of many. Remember, we had 2 business metrics, the business development and the breadth of services. And if you look at the right side there in the business development, the people who've been through this new manager program are again pretty much doubling the value of the opportunities that they're identifying. And on the breadth of services, again, practically a doubling of the proportion of those opportunities that have multiple service line involved in the proposal and in the engagement. So that's the end of the current story, and then what's next for us? We're going to continuously improve on top of this, innovate around the technology. We have a lot of new technologies and systems we want to layer in now, but layer in once. We don't like to have many platforms going on around the company. We want to have one platform and one integration. We're going to keep on with those future-focused skills. We're going to introduce more deliberately the social learning using the JAM platform that comes with success factors. We're using it a little bit now, but we're going to make that available to everybody and put some very good guidelines in it so that you can integrate it with the rest of the learning elements. And ultimately, once we've transformed learning at EY, we would like to do it for the world because we have big aspirations at EY, building a better working world. So even personally, I think, well, what could I do next? Well, build a better learning world. And we're very lucky at EY as well to have a corporate responsibility initiative that started last year. It's called Ripples, and it's to do this very thing. It's to enable underrepresented communities here and everywhere around the world to, through education, actually, improve their lives and improve their own opportunities in life. So I think that's where we might want to go next with learning outside EY. I'll end on a better question. One of our strategies or techniques we use with our clients, and we use internally at EY as well, is better questions, because we believe the better the question, the better the answer, the better the world works. So we're all about how can we ask a better question. So our better question about learning is, how can what you learn transform who you become? And for our people at EY, that means that we help them and they can stay relevant for their current roles, but also they can think about who they want to become as individuals, what their career wants to be, or what they want their career to be, and we want to give them the opportunity to become that person at EY with not just the prescribed learning, but with all of the learning opportunities that they have at EY. So better learning at EY is our motto.